Today I'm going to talk about noise control on the layout and start adding some terrain. I hope you stay tuned. Hi, thank you for joining me today. This will be the layout update for July 2019. I'm calling it early August because, well, I missed the end of July and it's now early August. When I left off the last time, I had finished the sub-road bed and was getting closer to cork and track. Before I move ahead with that, I turn my attention to noise control. Now, I'm not trying to make a quiet railroad. That doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Railroads are noisy things. But especially in the smaller scales, the noise we get takes on a strange quality. It's toy-like, a little hollow, and maybe even a little fuzzy. When I built my first layout, I experimented with a product that many of you will remember. It was Instant Roadbed. It was a Butyl Rubber product that was designed to replace roadbed. It did a great job. Butyl Rubber is fantastic for absorbing vibration, has good sound deadening qualities, and I really liked it. The problem it has is it's just too easy to deform it, and you would end up with unreliable track that was once reliable. So I abandoned it and stuck with the cork. For this layout, I'm going to take a hint from Jason at JNW Series. As a side note, if you haven't seen the viaduct he's building, I encourage you to go check out the series. Jason's building this gorgeous, tall, curved viaduct that is prototypical to his area in Australia. He's doing a great job, and this is going to be an impressive scene when he's finished. But back to the point. Jason is using a sound deadening material between his roadbed and his sub-road bed. So he's creating an isolation layer. I like that idea. Now, I'm using a different product than Jason is, and I have absolutely no idea which one is better. But I know a guy who restores classic cars, actually pickup trucks, and he uses this material. I have no idea a brand name or manufacturer. The backing is all plain. But it's a cotton product that's been infused with butyl rubber. He lines the passenger compartment of his trucks, and he swears by it. So he gave me a big piece out of his supply. I like the idea of the butyl rubber, and of course the price was right. So I decided to go with this. It goes on pretty easily. When I first started installing it, I was cutting it into short pieces, but I quickly learned that it would conform to reasonable curves very nicely. It went on very quickly. It took about an hour and a half to cut and install the pieces. The adhesive backing is very strong. I cut a piece off, attached it to a piece of scrap plywood, and I wasn't able to get the material up without destroying the material. And I never did get the adhesive layer up. I don't know if this isolation layer will be effective. This is all just theory. And I want to try and test that theory. Now, this is not a scientific test by any means. There are too many variables that I haven't taken into account. But I wanted to try and run this test anyhow, just for my own curiosity. I've set up my mic that I use for recording. It's a studio grade condenser mic. and the audio samples that I take from this, I won't be editing in any way. I'm using an empty coal hopper. It's been weighted according to the NMRA, and it has metal trucks and wheel sets. For the first run, I'll clamp some track to the bare sub-road bed just so that it doesn't bounce around. For the second run, I'll move the track over to a section of road bed that has the isolation layer. Again, I'll clamp it just to keep it in place. So let's have a listen. So what's your verdict? To my ears, the isolation layer seems to have helped. It's a little bit quieter, both on the recording and in the room when I was running the test. Now let's see what the software thinks. Looking at the spectral analysis, the sample taken from the isolation layer test clearly shows less noise across all frequencies than the bare plywood test. And the noise from the isolation layer is less intense. The linear frequency analysis confirms this. The isolation layer sample shows lower peak levels at almost all frequencies. I have no idea how representative these results are of the results that I will get when the track is ballasted and I start running real trains. But they are promising, and they suggest that I'm on the right track. And I thought they were interesting enough to share. I guess I'm really never going to know whether this isolation barrier is having any effect. By the time the track gets ballasted and trains are running, it'll all be subjective at that point anyhow. At this point, I was getting a little tired of sub-road bed and looking at open bench work. So to do something just a little bit different, I decided to start adding a bit of terrain. I'm working over here at the entrance to the room. There's no tracks running through this area, so I can't get into too much trouble. And this is where the acid pit is going to be located. I'm kind of looking forward to getting to that. So I decided to start building the terrain. For this area, the only thing that makes sense to me is cardboard lattice and plaster cloth. I'm using real good thick cardboard, and it's hot glued at all the joints. Just cover it with paper towels soaked in plaster. My terrain at this point. I'm not going to go any further until I get backdrops up and get a little further on the terrain, but I needed a break from the sub-road bed. I do have the cork. I got a big roll of cork and I've cut it into strips. So the next update, I will be laying cork and with a little bit of luck, putting down some track. I almost forgot. In the last layout, I pointed out an area where I had joined two pieces of the sub-road bed with a wooden splice plate, and it was directly above the tracks below it. The trains would have fit underneath, but it was too close and it just wouldn't have looked right. So I'd like to thank everybody. I got some great suggestions. I ended up using a piece of thin sheet metal that I had, and I removed the wooden splice plate and glued the sheet metal in place using JB Weld epoxy for metal. It's plenty strong, and I picked up about 4 scale feet of clearance. So thanks everybody for your suggestions. I'm happy with the way this turned out. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. Till next time.